Imagine a country drowning in stolen pensions, where gangs control the Amazon, and politicians rob trillions while the poor starve. This isn't fiction, it's Brazil. Let's dive in and expose why this resource-rich nation is collapsing under corruption, violence, and broken promises. 1. Corruption. The Great Brazilian Heist. Corruption in Brazil is not just an issue, it's a structural feature. From the presidency to municipal governments, corruption infiltrates every layer of governance. One of the most notorious cases was Operation Car Wash, or Lava Jato. This investigation uncovered a vast scheme involving Petrobras, the state oil company, where billions were siphoned off through inflated contracts and kickbacks. This implicated high-level executives, major contractors, and top politicians, especially from the Workers' Party, PT, including President Lula. Lula was convicted for receiving bribes in the form of luxury apartment renovations but was later released due to procedural technicalities. Still, the evidence showed clear involvement. In this Lava Jato operation, politicians and CEOs stole more than $25 billions via kickbacks on Petrobras contracts. Executives admitted bribing 1,829 politicians, mostly in the Lula's PT Workers' Party, to supporters, and to Lula himself. Another scandal, Mensalão, involved the PT Workers' Party paying bribes to Congress members to secure legislative support and votes, with hundreds of millions of Brazilian reals involved. At the core of the scandal, again, the convicted President Lula was the mastermind of the robbery. More recently, government schemes have siphoned funds from pensioners and retirees, with over 6 billion Brazilian reals stolen from the retirement system, directly hurting elderly Brazilians and workers who paid into the system their whole lives. Critics argue that under Lula and the PT Workers' Party, the theft of public money has more than quadrupled, disguised through populist programs, inflated contracts, and misuse of state funds. Corrupt officials enrolled retired elderly into fake unions, deducting their meager pensions without consent. Lula's brother is involved in the scheme. Lula's hypocrisy is the worst of all. Convicted in 2017 for accepting bribes, a luxury apartment and a small farm, later annulled on technicalities, Lula self-proclaims being the most honest person in Brazil. Also, Lula's ministers have been resigning over corruption, often involving bribery, embezzlement, and influence peddling. One example being Communications Minister Filho, who funneled millions to family projects. This corruption doesn't just make headlines. It destroys institutions. It drains money from healthcare, education, infrastructure, and public safety. It increases costs for honest businesses, distorts markets, and favors cronyism over merit. It creates a sense of powerlessness in the population. For many Brazilians, the system is rigged, and hard work doesn't pay off. 2. Violence. The killing fields. Brazil has one of the highest absolute homicide rates in the world, with around 60,000 murders every year. That's roughly 10% of the global total. Much of this violence is driven by drug trafficking, territorial disputes between gangs, and organized crime. Cities like Rio de Janeiro and Fortaleza suffer from near-warfare conditions in their favelas. Robberies, assaults, and street crime are a part of daily life for millions. Even basic commutes come with the constant fear of being mugged. The causes go deep: massive inequality, poor policing, overcrowded prisons that serve as crime schools. Law enforcement is either overwhelmed, corrupt, or both. The justice system is slow, inefficient, and often complicit. Conviction rates are low, and impunity is the norm. Amazon cities like Belém suffer rates of 34 per 100,000 people, 14% above Brazil's already brutal average. The power of gangs, PCC cartel and Red Command cartel dominate 1/3 of Amazon municipalities, running illegal mining, logging, and drug routes tied to Colombian cartels. And prisons are recruitment hubs, which 80% gang-controlled. On the streets things are not safer, as urban war zones endanger citizens and tourists. Rio's Avenue of Death sees daily shootouts, as police collude with gangs, leaving favelas in permanent terror. Lula's PT Workers' Party and Lula himself are allegedly supporting and helping these criminal organizations, along with dictator and Supreme Court Minister Alexander de Moraes, also known as the phallic head judge. 3. Economic sabotage. Custo Brasil, or Brazil's cost exodus. Businesses are fleeing the country. High taxes, 13.25% interest rates, and red tape policies, which keep future investors away. 94 large companies delisted from Brazil's stock exchange in the past 10 years. Manufacturing jobs vanish, 100,000 jobs lost at Petrobras and Odebrecht companies alone, also in part due to involvement in corruption. Unemployment is another structural issue. Official rate, 7%. But in reality? Double that with underemployment, as real figures are much higher when you count underemployment and informal work. Youth turn to crime as youth unemployment is especially high. Like half of the northeast of Brazil works in formal jobs, and job prospects are slim to none. Many people work below their qualifications or juggle multiple part-time gigs to survive. This not only reduces the quality of life but also weakens the economy. It lowers consumer spending and increases dependence on unstable welfare systems. The debt bomb and President Lula's lies are inevitable. Public debt hits 76.5% of GDP, while Lula's fiscal framework cut 70 billion Brazilian reals from social spending while hiking interest rates and crushing small businesses. 4. Brain drain. Skilled professionals flee as jobs prospects vanish. The Human Capital Index scores plummet to 40% in the northern region of Brazil, which is the same as sub-Saharan levels. Brazil produces talented professionals, but many choose to leave. Doctors, engineers, programmers, and scientists emigrate to other countries in search of higher pay, safer environments, and professional recognition. Meanwhile, inside Brazil, bureaucracy, corruption, and instability make it extremely difficult to start or grow a business. High taxes, unpredictable regulations, and the infamous Custo Brasil drive away both local entrepreneurs and foreign investors. The business environment in Brazil is one of the most hostile in the world. Companies deal with an unbearable level of red tape policies, legal insecurity, poor infrastructure, and high logistics costs. Ports are congested, roads are crumbling, and energy is expensive. This makes Brazil uncompetitive globally. Many companies have been shutting down operations or moving them abroad. The result: fewer formal jobs, lower investment, and a shrinking middle class. 5. Political instability and polarization. The Workers' Party betrayal. Elected to help workers, Lula slashed pensions while enabling the 6.3 billion Brazilian reals fraud discussed earlier. His tax hikes on incomes over 50,000 Brazilian reals spook investors. The impunity culture. Only 8% of homicides end in convictions. Judges accept bribes and prisons are crime schools, which anger hard-working citizens who pay the highest taxes in the world. The Venezuela risk. 79% of Brazilians want non-politicians in power. Experts believe a strongman could exploit this popular despair, as previous President Bolsonaro did. Brazilians are in general fear that the country falls into the same nightmare as neighbor Venezuela, and in the hands of communism and corrupt politicians who support it, like President Lula. Venezuela's collapse sent 30,000 plus migrants into Brazil, and if Brazil implodes due to socialism failure and Lula's destructive behavior, mass migration will spike. Brazil is a country with immense natural resources, cultural richness, and economic potential. But behind its vibrant surface lies a deep web of chronic problems that make life hard for millions of Brazilians. And these problems are not isolated. They feed into each other, creating a cycle that is incredibly difficult to break. This is why, for many, Brazil feels like a broken country. Brazil isn't just failing, it's being looted. Until politicians face prison, not palaces, its people will remain hostages in a paradise plundered. And all of these problems are connected. Corruption steals the funds needed to improve education, public safety, and infrastructure, feeding crime and poverty. And crime discourages investment, while bad infrastructure also pushes away businesses, leading to high unemployment, which adds to more poverty and crime. The brain drain makes it harder to fix anything because the country loses its best minds, and the cycle keeps repeating. some try to paint a more hopeful picture. Brazil is still one of the largest economies in the world, rich in natural resources, with a young population and a strong cultural identity. But potential doesn't mean much when the same systemic failures persist decade after decade. Efforts to fix these issues exist, but they are slow, uneven, and often sabotaged by the same corrupt forces that caused the problems in the first place. The bottom line: Brazil is stuck in a vicious cycle of crime, corruption, poverty, and dysfunction. The ruling elites and politicians steal from workers and retirees, while the institutions are too weak to hold anyone accountable and also involved in scandals. Millions live in fear of economic insecurity. Businesses and talents are leaving, and the hope for a better future remains hostage to a broken system that benefits the few at the expense of the many. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.